Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 2, Text 15, and then we'll read through to 17, which has purple. Tout le monde comprend anglais. Wait. No? See all? Okay. So, I'll read word for word in the translation and then we'll do the two verses. Kavi,
Kavi,
another son known as Kavi.
another son known as Kavi.
Kaniyan,
Kaniyan,
who was the youngest?
who was the eldest
Youngest.
or the youngest?
Sorry, I'm not enunciating clearly. Vishayeshu,
Vishayeshu,
in material enjoyments.
in material enjoyment.
Nispriha,
Nispriha,
being without attachment.
being without attachment.
Vishvijya,
Nishvidya,
after giving up.
after giving up.
Rajam,
Rajam,
his father's property.
his father's property,
The kingdom.
the kingdom.
Sahabandhuvi,
Sahabandhuvi,
accompanied by friends.
accompanied by friends.
Vanam,
Vanam,
the forest.
the forest.
Vivesha,
Vivesha,
keeping always.
keeping always.
Chite, within the core of the heart.
In the core of the heart.
Purusham,
Purusham,
the supreme person.
the supreme person.
Swarochisam,
Sarvasham,
self-effulgent.
self-effulgent.
Vivesha,
Vivesha,
entered. Kaishovaya,
Aishwarya,
a young man not fully in use.
a young man not fully in use.
Param, the
Param,
transcendental world.
The transcendental world.
Yatha, entered. Translation. Being reluctant to accept material enjoyment, Manu's youngest son, whose name was Kavi, gave up the kingdom before attaining full use. Accompanied by his friends, he went to the forest, always thinking of the self-effulgent Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart. Thus he attained perfection. From Karusha, another son of Manu, came the Karusha dynasty, a family of Kshatriyas. The Karusha Kshatriyas were the kings of the northern direction. They were celebrated protectors of Brahminical culture and were all firmly religious. And this is the verse of the day. From the son of Manu, named Drista, came a Kshatriya caste called Dashtra, whose members achieved the position of Brahmanas in this world. Then from the son of Manu named Mriga came Sumati. From Sumati came Bhuta Jyoti, and from Bhuta Jyoti came Vasu. Purport. Here it is said, Kshatram Brahma Bhuyam Gatam Shit Au. Although the Dashtas belonged to the Kshatriya caste, they were able to convert themselves into Brahmanas. This gives clear evidence supporting the following statement by Narada, famous verse, Yasyala Lakshanam Praptam Pusavane Bivanchakam Yadantra Anyatrapi Drishyata Tatkeneva Vinidishat. If the qualities of one group are found in the men of another, those men should be recognized by their qualities, by their symptoms, not by the caste of the family in which they were born. Birth is not at all important. It is one's qualities that are stressed in all Vedic literature. Senior devotees' permission, Ram Leela and for those. I try and say something. So the topic is the fact that it's the qualities of a person that determine his position in life. We, in the Vedic literature, it's the Bhagavad Gita, it's referred to as the Vana. That's the kind of work that you're naturally inclined to do, the work that you have natural propensity for. So there's, you could say there's two approaches to this. Some people say, just as Prabhupada says here, that it depends on your quality as to what position and what status in life you have. And then there's a very strong school of thought that says that no, it is what the family that you take birth in, that determines your status in life, that determines your vana, that determines what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, and who's your superior and who's your inferior. So this has been a debate for a long time, and to some extent it's still going on. People claiming, we're talking here about Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, so people claiming to be Brahmanas is simply because they're born in a Brahmin family. So Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, he preached quite strongly on this point, because his spiritual master also, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, preached very strongly. He actually took on all the caste Brahmins. They're called caste Brahmins, people who think that by being born in a family or a caste of Brahmanas, they just simply by that, having taken birth, that they are Brahmins. And so Prabhupada followed in his footsteps, and he also preached that, yes, you can't just be a Brahmin by saying, oh yeah, I am born in a Brahmin family, but you actually have to have the qualities, you have to manifest the qualities, which is reasonable. If somebody claims to be a Brahmin, well, where are your Brahminical qualities? We could maybe have an example that's more relevant, more easily accessible. Say somebody says, oh, I'm a doctor. Or what is your qualification? Oh, my father was a doctor. Oh, I'm also a doctor. No, what you have to become qualified. You have to be able to actually, know what surgery is, or what drugs are, or how to prescribe, or so many things. Or you're a high court judge. My father was a high court judge, so obviously now I'm a high court judge. But it's ridiculous. So it's the same. So this verse that Prabhupada quotes is stated by Narad Muni. It clarifies that this idea of being qualified simply because you take birth in a family is not in the Shastra, actually. It's not in the Shastra. Of course it used to be that Brahmins usually would give birth to people who were Brahmins, because they trained the children and they did a Kavadan Sanskar. They did this ritual before they conceived the child, so that the child that appeared in the family would be a qualified, suitable child. It used to be that a son of a Kshatriya would be a Kshatriya, and son of a Shudra would be a Shudra, like that. But it became more and more, the Brahmins became degraded, and so the offspring became degraded. But they still hang on to this idea. There's a lineage, I'm born in the family of Gautama Rishi, or I'm born in the family of Agastya Muni, or but what are you doing? What are you doing now? You can relate to it more because you're from the Indian background. Anyway, I just read this verse. This is a verse Prabhupada. So Narada Muni, he says, if one shows the symptoms of being a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, as described above, even if he has appeared in a different class, he should be accepted according to the symptoms of classification. So I'm going to read the purport. Herein it is clearly stated by Narada Muni that one should not be accepted as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra according to birth. For although this is going on now, it is not accepted by the Shastra. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvanya Maya Shristam, Gunakaya. The four divisions of society, the Brahmana, which means the teachers or the people who know the scripture, the Kshatriyas, that means the administrators, and the Vaishyas, that means the people who take care of cows and do business, and the Shudras, who are the workers who support all of those other activities. They are to be ascertained according to quality and activity. If one is born in a Brahmana family and has acquired the Brahminical qualifications, he is to be accepted as a Brahmana. Otherwise, he should be considered a Brahma Bandhu. Okay, so you took birth in a Brahmana family, but you aren't qualified, we'll call you a Brahma Bandhu. It means a friend of a Brahmana, associate of a Brahmana. Similarly, if a Shudra acquires the quality of a Brahmana, although he was born in a Shudra family, he is not a Shudra because he has developed the qualities of a Brahmana. He should be accepted as a Brahmana. So this is relevant now. This is relevant for us because Prabhupada came to the West, very, very mercifully came, and even more mercifully he created Brahmanas out of Leshan Shudras. By his association, by Prabhupada's association, people were elevated and were able to be given the mantras that we chant, and Brahmanas, and take up deity worship, and hopefully maintain a Brahminical lifestyle. Of course, not everybody has been able to do that, but that's the idea Prabhupada wanted. He saw there was a lack of qualified Brahmanas in India, and of course worldwide, and he wanted to create a society of Brahmanas, a Brahminical society. It doesn't mean that everybody has to act as a Brahmana, but it means that society is run on Brahminical principles, in other words, spiritual principles. So the original Vedic culture, pristine Vedic culture, is Brahminical. And the modern culture, so-called culture we have, is not. It's it's lacking the guidance of Brahmanas, qualified Brahmanas, who would make sure that everybody was spiritually on track. So without that Brahminical guidance, people degrade more and more into sense gratification and forget the goal of life, become bewildered. So the Krishna consciousness movement is meant to develop these Brahminical qualities. Regardless of community in which one is born, one develops the qualities of a Brahmana, he should be accepted as a Brahmana, and then may be offered the order of sannyas. Unless one is qualified in terms of the Brahminical symptoms, one cannot take sannyas. So it's a prerequisite for being a sannyasi is to be at least be a Brahmana. In designating a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, birth is not the essential symptom. This understanding is very important. Herein Narad Muni distinctly says that one may be accepted according to the caste of his birth, if he has the corresponding qualifications, but otherwise he should not. One who has attained the qualifications of a Brahmana, regardless of where he was born, that means also us, born in the West, he should be accepted as a Brahmana. Similarly, if one has developed the qualities of a Shudra or Chandala, regardless of where he was born, he should be accepted in terms of those symptoms. So I'm not going to read any more, but I was going to read some from the Bhagavad Gita about the actual qualities. The Bhagavad Gita explains the qualities of Brahmana. Anybody who wants to read it in the 18th chapter.
What was it?
Yes, Samadhamma. Wait a minute, I'll get the Bhagavad Gita. But the reason I'm not going to read it is because I was thinking I should say something about Bhishma Dev, because he's such a wonderful personality. There's 42,
Yes.
41, 42, 42. Samodamastapasocham Shanti Arjuna Vichara. So they're quite high qualities. And if you read the, not that verse, but the purport to 413 Chaturvanyam, where Prabhupada, Krishna talks about the four varnas. In the purport, Prabhupada speaks about the varnas, but then he says, but a Vaishnava is transcendental to all the varnas. Yeah? A Vaishnava is above the Brahmanas. So that's actually what we're aspiring for. We're not aspiring to have a caste or to be, qualified Brahmanas. We're aspiring to be transcendentalists. But the social system, the Varnashram, the four orders of life and the four spiritual divisions, are meant to support our progress so that we can eventually transcend these tendencies, designations, varnas, and become completely spiritually absorbed. So anyways, I was going to say something about Bhishma Dev. Is that all right? Is that what people would prefer? Yeah? So Bhishma Dev, we know a lot about Bhishma Dev. He's one of the Mahajans. And there's so many personalities that we don't know much about. Like Jayadev Goswami, we sing this verse, Kava Kara Kamala Varena Kam Bhuta Senga. We sing this verse every day. It was written by Jayadev Goswami. And he wrote his Dasavatar Stotra, but he also wrote a very famous book, Gita Govinda, about Radha and Krishna. But it's not actually known what century he was born in. The point I'm making is that there's a lot of personalities we don't know much about, because it wasn't considered so important. The biographical details of the person what is not so important. What's important is what they said, and what they wrote. The fact that they were pure devotees of Krishna, that's the important information. Anyway, but Bhishma, because he was a central figure in the Mahabharata, and he's mentioned, we know he's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, it describes grandfather Bhishma. He's actually the grandfather of Arjuna. So Arjuna is he plays the role of every man. He's Krishna's disciple in the Bhagavad Gita. So his grandfather is an important person, his grandfather Bhishma. So Bhishma's appearance in this world as his festival today. So his appearance in this world is extraordinary, and his disappearance was maybe even more extraordinary. But they're both we know a lot about both events, and we know a lot about what happened. He was a very old man when he eventually left his body. And we know because it's recorded in the Mahabharata. So I'm going to read a section of the Mahabharata. It's actually one of the appendices. It describes, first of all, how Ganga became his mother. So in the Vedic culture, everything is a person. Everything has ultimately is a personal has a personal identity. It's like we think, well, it's just a river, but actually it's a person. Rivers are people. Like the sun is a person, and the moon is a person. And trees also, and every wherever there's life, there's a person. We understand it to be the soul. Anyway, so it explains how. So you have to go back before Bhishma is conceived to understand his parentage. So I'll try and read it reasonably slowly, and if there's something I think is not so clear to people who are newer, I'll try and explain a little bit. So in ancient times, there lived a king named Mahavisha. During his long life, he performed great sacrifices, and as a result, ascended to Indra's abode at the end of life. That means he went to heaven. So he's in the heavenly planets. once in an assembly of the gods with Brahma present. So Brahma is
Chief.
boss, is the boss. Like above all the demigods, and he's the engineer of the universe. So Mahavisha sought the divinely beautiful Ganga. So this is the river Ganga, but in her personal form, where she lives in the heavenly planets. So he saw her, this beautiful Ganga. As he looked at her, a gust of wind suddenly blew away her garments. And all the celestials looked away when they saw this happening. But Mahavishu continued to gaze at her, captivated by her beauty. And so for this rudeness, Brahma cursed him as follows: "You will again be born on earth, but you will return here after one lifetime." So this is going to be Bhishma's father. Yeah? He's been cursed to take birth on the earth. Mahavishu thought for a moment, remembering all the monarchs on earth. Among them he considered a king named Pratipa to be the most pious. He therefore asked Brahma if he might become Pratipa's son, to which Brahma agreed. Okay, so he's going to take birth as prince, the son of Pratipa. So Ganga, having seen Mahavishu's unashamed attraction for her, left the assembly thinking of him. So something happened on the subtle platform there, right? As she went away, she came across the Vasus, who looked dejected. When she asked them the cause of their despondency, they replied, "We have been cursed by the powerful Rishi Vashishta, therefore we must take birth as men on earth. For this we are sorry." So the demigods, they've done something bad. It doesn't explain what, that's another story. Anyway, they've been cursed to take, but you will take birth on the earth. So Ganga heard how the 8 Vasus had tried to take away Vashishta, heavenly cow Nandini. The leader, Jiao, sounds like Jiao, like back to Jiao. It's written D-Y-A-U, Jiao. Their leader, Jiao, had been implored by his wife to seize the cow that belonged to Vashishta, which was able to give anything one desired. So this cow was able to give, whatever, give you an army or give you a feast for 1,000 people, whatever she would provide it from her. What Prabhupada called the milk bag or the udder. Jiao had assented to his wife's request and with his brother's assistance had stolen the cow. When Vashishta discovered the theft, he was furious. Obviously, furious. First of all, this cow, he'd lost his cow, but also been done in a criminal way. Understanding by his mystic power that the Vasus were responsible, he touched holy water and uttered the curse. The Vasus soon learned of the curse and went before the Rishi, remorsefully returning the cow and begging his forgiveness. But Vashishta said his words could not prove false. Repeatedly requested for mercy, he finally said, "You 8 Vasus will all be born on earth, but you will be freed from the curse quickly. Only Jiao, the chief culprit, will have to remain on earth for a full lifetime.
That's why he joined us.
He will be virtuous, powerful, and learned in the Vedas. Distribute a lot of books. No. But he will not beget offspring. He will not. Indeed, he will have to abstain from the pleasures of women. So he has to be a lifelong brahmachari. So this is going to be Bhishma. Yeah? He was the ringleader of the Vasus who stole the cow. So he's going to have to spend a lifetime on earth. And as part of that, on top of that, he has to be celibate, lifelong celibate. The Vasus asked Ganga to go to earth as a woman and become their mother, as they did not wish to enter the womb of any human, ordinary human. When Ganga asked who they would choose as their father, they replied, "There is a king named Pratipa who will soon have a son named Shantanu. That prince is destined to become our father." So there you go. You have Ganga and Shantanu lined up as the parents for Bhishma. Ganga was delighted. Shantanu would be an incarnation of Mahavishu. She smiled. I will surely become your mother. Go where you will. We will soon meet again. In due course, the Vasus fell from heaven and Ganga left for earth. Soon after, Shantanu was wandering along the banks of the Ganges, and he met the goddess. Struck by her beauty, he felt his hair stand on end. She must have been very beautiful there. Her hair is standing on end. Did you have that experience? You saw somebody? Her features were flawless, and she was adorned with fine silk robes as beautiful as the filaments of a lotus flower. His mouth dropped open. He could not take his eyes from her. Ganga was also attracted to the handsome monarch, and she returned his gaze, her dark eyes meeting his and sending a thrill through his body. This is a romance in the Mahabharata. You have everything there. All sorts of romance and drama and intrigue and murders and things. Moving closer to her, Shantanu said, "O beautiful one, whether you are a goddess, a Gandharvi, a Danava, an Asura, or an Apsara, I beg you to become my wife. You seem to have no protector. Allow me to become your shelter." Ganga glanced down demurely. "O king, I will become your wife and obey your commands. But I will make one condition. You must not interfere with my acts, whether they are agreeable or not. You must never address me in harsh words. If you act in this way, I will remain with you. But if you act otherwise, I will leave immediately." In other words, you have to follow these rules that I'm setting up. These are the ground rules, or in the contract. So he cannot question anything she does.
Activity.
And if he gets upset with her, "What are you doing?" she's going to leave. So she gets upset. So he has to be very careful. The king hardly gave any thought to her request. "Yes, yes, be it so," he replied at once, because he was so besotted with her. Whatever, I agree. He brought her back to Hastinapur, and a marriage ceremony was performed. Absorbed in Ganga's celestial beauty, Shantanu did not notice the passage of time. After a year together, which seemed like a few days, Ganga gave birth to a son. But within days of the birth, she threw the baby into the Ganges, where it was swept away by the waters. Can you imagine? The baby's just a couple of days old. The wife goes out with the baby, throws it in the river. Finished. Of course, nowadays you'd be arrested for such things, but okay, although horrified, Shantanu remembered Ganga's conditions, and he had to keep silent, not wanting to lose his beautiful wife. Each year, for 7 years, a boy was born, and each time Ganga took the child to the river and threw him in. The king managed to restrain himself, but when Ganga was about to drown the 8th child, he could not take it anymore. He ran after her, shouting, "Stop, you cruel woman! Why are you killing our children? Murderers of our sons! You are earning great sins by your acts." Ganga stopped by the riverbank and turned towards Shantanu. "As you desire a child, I will not kill this one. O king, take the child and raise him as your son. He will doubtlessly bring glory to your line, but in accordance with our agreement, I must now leave." So he's got the baby, but wife's gone. Ganga then revealed her identity to the mystified king. She told him about the Vasishta's cursing of the Vasus. "I have thus released the gods from the Rishi's curse." That's why she was throwing them in the river, because they would lose their human body and go straight back to heaven. So she was actually liberating them. That's why she was doing it. But he didn't understand. Now she's explaining. "O king, take this choice." Wait a minute. And she revealed the story of the Vashishta's cursing the Vasus. "I have thus released the gods from the Rishi's curse. This eighth child is Jao, who must remain on earth for a full lifetime." Understanding the situation and realizing that everything had been ordained by destiny, Shantanu tried to change Ganga's mind, but she was resolute. That's what women are like. When they make their mind up, that's it. She wants to have her own way, whatever. The king then asked that she take the baby with her to the celestial regions. When the child became a young man, he could return to earth. So Ganga agreed to that. She took the baby with her, because the baby needs his mother. Holding the baby close to her breast, she vanished into the river, because she actually, she is the river. Shantanu returned in sorrow to his capital, Hastinapur. So he was devastated, right? He lost his wife, all 7 children gone, and the one that survived is also gone.
He will come back.
Sorry?
But he will come back.
You think?
Yeah.
Let's see.
The ignorance.
Shantanu returned in sorrow to his capital, Hastinapur. He continued ruling the people, becoming famous for his virtue. He was loved by the citizens and ruled the world with justice and compassion. It was said that if he simply placed his hand on someone, that person would immediately be relieved of all material pain and anxiety. Okay, so fast forward. One day, some years after Ganga left, the king was hunting near the Ganges. As he pursued a deer along the river bank, he noticed that the river water, which had previously been deep and flowing, had now become a little trickle. What happened? This big river was just now a little trickling stream. Marveling, the king made his way upriver to find the cause. He soon came across a godlike youth who resembled Indra himself. The amiable-looking boy was holding a large bow. He had checked the river's flow by damming it with arrows. So he'd fired so many arrows so close together that the river had been dammed up. The king was astonished at this remarkable feat and gazed at the youth, trying to ascertain his identity. The boy suddenly disappeared, and the king, suspecting that it was his son, said to the river, "O Ganga, show me my child." As soon as he spoke, the goddess rose from the waters, holding the boy by his hand. She approached the king and said, "Here is the 8th son, whom we conceived together. O king, take him now. I have reared him carefully. Instructed by rishis such as Vashishta, Shukra and Parashuram, he has become proficient in all aspects of Vedic knowledge and is expert in arms and warfare." Ganga then vanished, leaving the boy with Shantanu. The king then took him back to the city, where he would later become famous as Bhishma.
What was his name?
Hare Krishna.
What was his name?
Devaprastha?
Devaprastha.
Yeah.
First.
He took the name Bhishma. That's the end of. There's no more to read there. I think it's probably in the Mahabharata. I don't have the page sorted out. But he took the name Bhishma when he took the vow, because his father Shantanu had lost his wife Ganga, and then he became like, he didn't want to be a nunci, I think he actually had another wife, and then he wanted to marry this girl called Satyavati, and Satyavati was apparently, yeah, that's right, yeah, apparently a fisherman's daughter. But so he met her when he was out one day, and he fell in love with her. But this time, Bhishma, what we know as Bhishma is, he was already grown up. But anyway, his father wanted to get married again. So his father met this girl and asked her, Satyavati's father, can I marry your daughter? I'm the king, please can I marry your daughter? And he said, yeah, but there's a condition, is that my son, the son of my daughter, my grandson, will be the king. Because he knew the king already had another son, and that son would be, by the law of primogeniture, he would be the king, the next king. So he said, yes, you can marry my daughter, but, their child has got to be the king. You can forget about that other boy becoming the king. So King Shantanu, he thought, well, that's not going to work, My son is so qualified, obviously he's got to become the king. So he went home feeling depressed. He said, I met somebody I really like, but now I can't marry him. He's so depressed. So Bhishma, he wanted to find out why his father was suddenly so depressed. So he went to the servants or the people in the palace, and he found out that his father had met this beautiful girl that he wanted to marry, and the condition was, like this. And so Bhishma said, no problem. He said, my father can marry her. I'll just take a vow. If I take a vow of lifelong celibacy, I will never marry. I'll never have a son. And I will renounce the kingdom myself. I'll renounce the kingdom, and I'll, never to marry. So he told his father like this. And as he said, I renounce this kingdom, which for a Kshatriya, how can a Kshatriya renounce a kingdom like that? I renounce this kingdom, and I renounce marriage. I renounce my women, I renounce, all enjoyment in life. I will just be an ascetic. So my father, in order to please his father, so when he made this great vow of lifelong celibacy, which is like, it's not really possible for a Kshatriya, because a Kshatriya is the personification of passion. Like a Brahmana his nature is to be in goodness, but a Kshatriya's nature is to be passionate, and that passion can be used for Krishna. Kings would have many wives, and many qualified, not unqualified, but ideally qualified offspring. So he made that vow, I will never marry. The kingdom. Because if, you see, he might have renounced the kingdom, but then if he himself had had children, those children then would have contested, the fact that this Sishaman's grandson had become the king. Oh, okay, Bhishma didn't become the king, but his children can, which is the problem we got in the Mahabharata, that Pandu couldn't become the king, but then his sons claimed the kingdom. So he didn't want that to happen. So he renounced the kingdom, and he also renounced getting married, so there would be no issue. So when that happened, the demigods are aware of him making this vow, and they all went, Bhishma, 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 what a terrible vow. Terrible, Bhishma means terrible. What a terrible vow. Oh. But that's how he got the name Bhishma. Hare Krishna, terrible. So, we don't know what vows that Gauranga and Nataraj is going to make. He's already made vows to follow four regulative principles. Maybe that's enough for Kali Yuga. Hare Krishna. Does anybody want to add anything? Mahabharata stories are wonderful. Yeah? Mahabharata is full of stimulation for the mind who likes to hear fiction or likes to hear some new information or something. The first time you read the Mahabharata, it's like, wow, this is really good. You can't put it down. And the Ramayana also, but it's expertly written, because it entertains at the same time educates. Real literature is like that. I think even in the West until fairly recently, the idea is that literature would elevate you, as well.
Yeah.
Not just entertainment or some low-class entertainment.
Bhishma continued to guide the dynasty. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, he's referred to as the grandfather of the dynasty. Although he didn't accept the throne or anything, he was always there looking after the throne, looking after who's going to be whoever was going to be king. Bhishma supported that.
Do you want to say something about how he died?
Yeah,
Do you remember that? Well, if anybody wants to leave,
Yeah, I can say.
it's already 10 to 9, but we just quickly say, because his departure was amazing.
He, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, it was a family affair. There was, both sides were all related. They were all Bhishma's family. The Kurus were his, his grandsons as well as the Pandavas. But he took the wrong side. Prabhupada said like that. He backed the wrong side. He backed Duryodhana because of he was being maintained by Duryodhana. And doing that, he also had to die. But he maintained his affection for the Pandavas because they were all pious and devotees of Krishna. And he was also a devotee of Krishna. But it's significant, he wanted to be in, it was known that he likes the Pandavas more than he liked the Kurus. And I don't know what day of the fighting, because it was 18 days of war. But each day many significant things happened. But he asked, I think during the war, Duryodhana came to him and said, "Grandfather, I think you're not fighting with your full strength, because the Pandavas are still alive." So that was like insulting him. Kshatriya doesn't hold back. I mean, Kshatriya doesn't hold back. It's fighting, So he said, "I'm not holding back, but if you think so, here's what. I'm going to give you 5 arrows. Keep for me." This was like the night before. So you hold these arrows and I'll come and get it from you, and tomorrow I'll use those arrows. Each one of them will kill one of the Pandavas. And Duryodhana, he says, "Is that good enough?" And Duryodhana thought, "Well, I'll hold the arrows." He still wasn't completely convinced of Bhishma. But Krishna, being omniscient one, Krishna knew that he was keeping those arrows for Bhishma. So he told Arjuna, "Go to Bhishma, to Duryodhana's camp, and ask him for those 5 arrows, because he once said that he would grant you a benediction, and you've never collected, so go and collect it in the form of those arrows." So he went, got the arrows, and Duryodhana, "How do you know about these arrows?" There's only one person who knows everything, and that's Krishna. So he gave the arrows, and then in the morning when Vishnu came to collect the arrows so he could kill the Pandavas, Duryodhana said, "Oh, Arjuna came and I gave it to him." And Bhishmadev could understand Krishna is behind this. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I will fight so strong today that either Krishna will have to break his promise not to fight, not to participate in the war, or his friend Arjuna will die. He wanted to see Krishna break his promise for his devotee. And he did. Krishna broke his promise, and Bhishmadev was on the battlefield that day. He was from his back, he was shot with so many arrows, and he was lying on a bed of arrows going through his body.
Well, Shikandi, you have to say a little bit about Shikandi as well.
Yes,
Because
she's involved.
yeah, that Shikandi was a woman in his last life. And Bhishma wouldn't fight with him. He refused to fight with Shikandi.
No, what it was Shikandi, who was Ambika, a woman.
Yeah.
Bhishma had Amba. Bhishma Dev had kidnapped her to marry one of his,
I think it was it Vegetarian?
No, she was kidnapped.
A Chitrangada?
She was kidnapped.
Yeah, she was kidnapped, but he kidnapped 3 princesses because he wanted,
To get them married.
was it for Vichitravirya? It was for
it was for
Vichitravirya.
Vichitravirya.
Yeah.
But she was already,
Salva, king of Salva.
yeah, the king of Salva. She was already, her heart was given to another. Who, but no one could fight with Bhishma. Bhishma was the most powerful warrior on the planet. And, Shalva tried, I believe, and it was useless.
Bhishma defeats him.
Bhishma defeated him. So, he carried Ambika to marry, was it Vichitravirya or one of his sons?
There was 2 brothers.
Two
So
brothers.
Chitrangada was killed. Chitrangada was killed by a Gandharva with the same name.
Yes.
And then Vichitravirya died of
Yes.
tuberculosis. We had these 3 wives, but he was sick and he couldn't impregnate his wives, and he left. And then they brought Vasudeva.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah, one thing.
One thing leads to another story. It's just,
So she was so furious that this Amber
but
was
what
so
happened was
furious. She
as
took
she
a
was
vow.
as she was given to the prince to marry her, he knew that her heart was given to someone else. So he says, I don't want you. He rejected her. So she was, so Bhishma took her back to the kingdom she came from and took her back to that fellow that she wanted to marry. And he thought, well, I don't want you anymore. So she lost on both sides. And then she took a vow that she performed some austerities. So the next life, she would.
No, she was trying to marry him.
Well, first she wanted to tell Bhishma,
You have to marry me.
yeah, you have to marry me because you made it so nobody wants me. And you kidnapped me,
Yeah,
so you have to marry
you
me.
wrecked my life.
Yeah, you messed up everything. So Bhishma said, but I can't. Why not? I took a vow. I took a vow not to get married,
She even goes to Parashuram. That's when Parashuram and Bhishma get into fight.
Right.
She takes shelter of Parashuram, saying that your disciple is not listening, is not marrying.
This is not dharmic. You should marry me. But Bhishma was, a special kid. So she took birth. She took a former sidewise and took birth as Shikandi with a vow to kill Bhishma.
But then, because they knew that he would not fight, Bhishma would not fight with Shikandi. Because he said, she's a woman, I won't fight. I won't fight with him, her.
She looked like a transgender.
Oh, that's
The
not
modern little.
Yeah.
So what they did in order to kill Bhishma, because you couldn't kill him. You couldn't kill him. Sorry, I
Unless
think it's in my coat pocket. That
He had a benediction. He can die. He
Whenever.
can choose when he wants
Yeah.
to die.
So in order to kill him, they put Shikandi in the front. And they came behind Shikandi, shooting arrows at Bhishma, with Shikandi in the front. And then, because Bhishma wasn't going to respond, because he wouldn't fight with Shikandi. And in that way, they were able to...
And that's why he was lying on a bed of arrows. There's just so many arrows. And he still wouldn't die. But the Pandavas came to see him. And he spoke the most incredible wisdom, lying on the bed of arrows.
And that's in the a lot of that is in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes.
He says, yeah.
And Krishna was present also. Krishna was there. So many great personalities. They came, wanted to see when he's going to leave his body. But not till he's ready.
He was lying there for months.
Yeah, he lay there for
Months?
months.
Yeah. And they said that the arrows, there's so many arrows in his body that there wasn't a room for one finger between the arrows. So he was just like...
It's like a bed, yeah.
And because there were so many, he was lying like on the ground, but the arrows were
Going through.
keeping him from actually being literally on the ground. He was on the, just his...
And Krishna appeared. He had a desire to see Krishna before he goes.
He took a vow also until unless this Kuru dynasty is in proper safe hands, I'm not going to leave the body. He took one vow
That was
also.
another vow.
That's why when Yudhishthira Maharaj, the whole Mahabharata war was finished, and then now Yudhishthira is the king. That's when, okay, now I can leave.
I can leave now.
Oh, then he was peaceful, able to
That's when they all
leave.
came. That's
Yeah, they went to see him.
That's when Vishnu Sahasranama was spoken.
Yes.
When Bhishma Dev and Yudhishthira's conversation, like there are 6 famous questions. It's amazing that conversation between Yudhishthira and whole Sri Sampradaya follows.
So that's where the Vishnu Sahasranama...
Vishnunama was spoken, and then in the Vishnu Sahasranama, there is Lord Chaitanya's advent. That's the only time in the Mahabharata it is comes
Predicted.
out. Yeah, comes out. The famous sloka, Suvarna Varna Hemanga Varnanga Skandanami Sannyasa Krichama Shanto Nishta Shanti Parana. Lord Chaitanya's advent, like his features, everything is glorified by Bhishma Dev.
So he was no ordinary person.
Super special. Because if you're lying with so many arrows in your body, you think your mind would be finished. You wouldn't be able to cope with the pain and the whole situation. But he was clear as a bell, giving all these instructions to Yudhishthira, speaking all this completely pure philosophy. Amazing. So he was totally transcendental, even though he was a Kshatriya. So it's not to do with the external designation.
He's one of the authorities on one of the Mahajans. He's one of the 12 authorities on the Vedas. He's that learned.
Bhishma Dev ki
Jai.
Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.
And then Bhagavati ki.
Jai. Agni Dev ki Jai. This is life, discussing spiritual topics.
Right. Good way to come back.
Yeah, really.
Mata.
Satyavati.
Yes.
She was also the mother of Vasudev.
Yes. Yes.
And when the king died, that she married, who did she marry?
She married Shantanu, right?
No, Shantanu was Ganga.
Sorry. What was your question?
Satyavati, she gets married, she
Yeah.
gets 2 sons, Chitangara and
Chitravirya. Yeah.
Chitangara, he dies
Yeah.
because he wears the same name as a devata,
Yeah.
and
Then.
he gets upset and he comes and kills him.
Yeah.
But then, no,
Mother Bhagavati, you're listening to the question, Probably I'm not.
What was the question?
She's saying something more than question. Okay, go ahead.
no, I was
There are
asking
different
that
versions of Mahabharata.
Satyavati, she was also the mother of Vyasadeva.
Yeah, by Parashara. She was an interesting person.
Yeah, and then she ruled.
She already had
Yeah,
a
and
child.
she ruled as a.
She was not an ordinary fisherman's daughter either. She somehow or another was there, but she wasn't,
No, but that time the ladies, they didn't have to be married. It's written in the Mahabharata. It's one sage which is the. But anyway, but my question was, when Satyavati, she was